Joe Bonnier for FastPitchPower.com and Empower Athletic Development. Today's video I'm going to be talking about the contribution of rotation to the windmill pitching delivery. It's really a concept or a topic that I struggled with early on, at least communicating with Phil and Carly when I first started working with softball people. I saw the windmill delivery as a rotational movement, and the feedback I got was that it really wasn't, that rotation could contribute to a lot of mechanical errors, and so I believed them. I said, you guys are the pitching experts. I'm the fitness instructor. Where am I going wrong here? Because I was trying to believe what I saw as much as I was believing, Phil and Carly. So it came down to that I was really talking about rotation in a different way than they were. Long story short, when emphasized during the windmill sequence, when too much rotation is emphasized, pitchers can lose control and lose command, quite simply, and velocity as well. Okay. However, it's not to say that it shouldn't be understood how much rotation needs to be available and how rotation contributes to performance. Hopefully these diagrams that I show you today illustrate, whether you're a fitness professional, parent, coach, athlete, how your body rotates and when it needs to rotate in order to achieve optimal sequencing during the windmill delivery. When I say the pitching sequence is a rotational movement, right, it's as rotational as sprinting or walking. You cannot have optimal gait mechanics, you cannot have optimal running mechanics without the torso being able to rotate, specifically the shoulders and the pelvis, the shoulders and the hips being able to dissociate, turn away from, and reassociate, turn into, and then dissociate, turn away from in the opposite direction. You can't have optimal movement mechanics, whether it's walking, running, swinging, or pitching, without rotation. Okay? So when rotation is emphasized, rotate harder, twist faster, during the sequence, things can get out of hand. When fundamental rotation of the torso and involved joints, shoulders and hips, isn't permitted and controlled, we have some issues. Okay? For fitness professionals, rehab professionals, this is a really important video to watch and understand. Hopefully I do a good job communicating. For pitching instructors, parents, and athletes, it's important to understand, I'm not quite sure how you're going to communicate this to your athletes, if you're going to train it or try to coach it. I think it's better that you understand it, that you appreciate it, that you acknowledge its existence, and then if your athlete's having some mechanical issues, maybe even physical, maybe she's having some shoulder problems or back problems, that this is something that is being brought up when talking to maybe a physical therapist or a strength and conditioning coach. Hopefully they have the understanding of the windmill sequence so they can get closer to the solution as to what mechanically might be going wrong. Okay. The most important piece of context moving forward in this video is that we're going to do a few things here. Okay, we are going to strip all the appendages from your athlete. They have no arms, they have no legs. Your pitcher is floating above the pitching rubber. Just her skeleton, her rib cage, and her pelvis. That's it. No arms, no legs. You have to envision this, all right, or this isn't going to work. All right. Second thing is that we are taking a bird's eye view of this athlete. You now are floating above your athlete, okay? Above that floating skeleton. Looking down on your athlete, you're going to draw a line connecting their shoulders and another line connecting their hips. Okay? Let's turn to this first object here. With a bird's eye view of your athlete, if they're facing home plate, say this is my pitcher, she's facing home plate here. We're going to be moving this way throughout the sequence. Her shoulders and her hips are vertically stacked on top of one another, so you actually wouldn't see these two lines here, but just for demonstration purposes, I acknowledge that they're both here. They're on top of one another, they're parallel, they're both facing home plate. I am square to home plate. The line between my shoulders and the line between my pelvis. We need this reference for the remainder of this video. Okay? I'm going to show you now the sequence in how the shoulders and hips or pelvis dissociate and reassociate throughout the motion. And hopefully, I'm going to be able to point out at what points during the pitching delivery in softball terms that this occurs, so you can say whether or not, yeah, that does happen. So you'll agree with me, or maybe not. Okay? All right. First things first. Loading up. My pitcher's loading up. Shoulders and pelvis are square to home plate. I'm not turned. I'm not angled. Before I get ready to push away from the pitching rubber, everything is square to home plate. I think we all agree on that. I begin my drive away from the pitching rubber, starting to move toward home plate. My hips, okay, will remain square. My shoulders just turn slightly, okay, to allow this arm to get overhead and to begin my tracking sequence. I do not keep my shoulders square throughout the sequence. I have to turn. Do you agree with me? I hope you do. Okay. What's more important here is the shoulders here. All right, again, I didn't even talk about this. I'm so sorry. For demonstration purposes, shoulders are in red, hips are in black. Hopefully I'll illustrate that regardless throughout this remainder of the video. Okay, so I start square, I begin to move. My hips, the black line, stays square to home plate because I'm pushing, accelerating my system, my skeleton, my body toward home plate. But my shoulders have to be able to turn slightly to begin to get that overhead motion. Okay? Critically here, I continue to accelerate. I turn my shoulders continue to dissociate from my hips, but my hips then begin to turn. Right? The whole body has to turn and organize pretty much where I'm facing, or square to now third base. We agree that this is going to be a very common position. Again, I always apologize for my very superficial mechanics. I'm not a pitcher, but especially for fitness professionals, I need to get you guys on the same page so you kind of understand where we are throughout the sequence. So at 12 o'clock here, my whole body, my shoulders and my hips are now facing third base. They're facing this way. My body's moving this way, but everything is square toward third base. Obviously, my head and my eyes are toward home plate. Okay? But I'm this way. I've now turned my body, okay, from being square to home plate. I've organized, and I'm now in this position. Shoulders, hips square to third base. Okay? But look at how that happened. They didn't all turn as one. Why didn't they turn as one? Because as I've talked about in previous videos, my lower body has to continue to accelerate as far as possible away from the pitching rubber. Okay? If everything turns together, I lose my ability to continue to push away or drive away from the pitching rubber. So I have to exhaust this extension out of my hips, out of my legs, while preparing my upper body to get in a good position, to get my arm overhead, which is a safe position, as well as getting a position to track, right, and deliver, complete the remainder of the delivery. I can't stay square to home plate. I have to turn, but I also have to exhaust the extension out of my lower body. So this sequence is very, very important, not only to velocity, but to preparing ourselves to complete the rest of the delivery. This dissociation is critical. Shoulders turning away from the lower body. I'll get into the training implications because I don't want you to just think shoulders turning away from the lower body. I want you to think that the lower body is resisting turning with the shoulders. That's where the training application will come in a second. Now, boom, stride foot contacts the ground, and I am pretty much square to third base. We're saying pretty much, okay? This isn't a theoretical model. This is how it works. However, these lines and stuff are based on my own accuracy with a whiteboard and dry erase marker. So the details might be a little bit different, but we're pretty much square to third base after being square to home plate, okay? What's important is how we got there. Now, differently than the dissociation in the beginning of the sequence, once the stride foot contacts the ground, this is where confusion may occur. Okay? Once the hips and shoulders are parallel, square to third base, the hips then dissociate away from the shoulders, turning back toward home plate. Why am I so sure of this? Because the remainder of the sequence, the athlete does not stay square to third base. They will turn. Okay? Just because rotation is not emphasized does not mean that it doesn't happen. Okay? This motion has to happen. And it happens in this manner. Just like in the golf swing, just like in batting mechanics, Just like in running or sprinting, the hips will dissociate away from the shoulders for a split second. In golf, this is referred to as X factor. This separation contributes to velocity. Okay? What this does, I don't know if you can see my hips here, but my hips will lead underneath my upper body. My lower body stays still for a split second. It doesn't stay still, but there's just a delay between the turning of the lower body and the turning of the upper body. That stretches everything across my torso. Like all these big muscles, obliques, pecs, abs, everything that's connected to each other, connecting this shoulder to this hip, right, is pre-stretched, right, and then obviously the athlete consciously delivers the pitch. That pre-stretch leads to a stretch reflex, bringing the torso around more rapidly, bringing the arm through more rapidly. We pre-stretch all those muscles and then they contract. This happens in nearly every athletic movement. I really can't think of one that it doesn't occur. So we're moving into the sequence here. You see still the dissociation. My hips are beginning to turn toward home plate. My upper body then slightly begins to follow. Okay, why am I sure of this? Again, we go back to this position. The athlete does not finish the pitch in this motion. They are not square to third base. They will turn. Just because rotation is not emphasized does not mean it does not occur. Very important. Now, also super critical, I get to this position. So, you see how my hips, black line, will go from square to third base, and then they'll begin to rotate toward home plate. Toward. Not all the way to or through. Toward. They put on the brakes. Okay? I talked about this once before, this whip analogy. They'll go from here, they'll then turn toward home plate up to release, where they will put on the brakes. This is like snapping or controlling a whip. Okay, I take the big, stiff handle, lead with the handle, I then accelerate the handle, and then put on the brakes, and the rest of the tip comes through. Okay? If the handle continues to move, there's no transfer, okay, or conservation of momentum from the heavy, stiff handle to the light, whippy tip of the whip. This has to come to a halt. So it comes to a halt, I don't know, 25 to 40 degrees away from home plate. It's not square to home plate. Right? However, again, it rotates toward home plate. We go from square to third base to about, my diagram says about 45 degrees. It then puts on the brakes. You'll see that the difference between this black line and this black line is minimal because the pelvis is decelerating its rotation. What's happening now to the shoulders and the separation between the pelvis and the shoulders is that it's closing. My hips are decelerating and coming to a stop while my shoulders are coming through. Okay, here. And as important as anything in this video, okay, in this last picture here, after follow through, the hips will remain rotated away from home plate. They won't square up to home plate. No athlete has that rotary capacity in that lead hip for the pelvis to spin on top of the lead hip. So they'll still be rotated away. However, the upper body will continue its rotation at follow-through after the ball is released. Again, these are elementary mechanics for fitness, for softball instructors and athletes. I apologize. I'm also trying to speak to fitness professionals and strength and conditioning coaches, so they understand how to balance their training and where certain exercises can really benefit a softball athlete on their terms. Okay, this ability to continue to rotate after the pitch, through the torso. Again, I have no arms, I have no legs. All right, I'm just a rib cage and a pelvis connected by a spine, floating. Okay, this ability here is what takes pressure off the front of the shoulder during follow-through. If I get stuck here, I can't rotate. I'm going to do a couple things. If I can't absorb this motion or absorb all the forces by moving, rotating, okay, I'm either going to extend and place pressure on my lower back, or I'm going to be in a really awkward position where my shoulder gets jammed up here, and this is a provocative position of impingement. Okay, so when you're having shoulder pain, you go to a physical therapist. Physical therapist will put your arm in this position, okay, and ask you if it hurts. Because this is the closest thing we can get to stuff crashing into each other. This is not a good position we want to be in. Okay, to avoid this position here, I just have to turn away. This frees up a lot of room in the front of the shoulder. So the rotation over the hips, over the stable lower body at follow-through is really important. Release. Okay. Hope I didn't lose you. Again, we're taking a bird's eye view of our athlete. We are in the air looking down. We drew a line between the shoulders and the hips, and we watched how those shoulders and hips dissociated. Again, I have no arms, I have no legs. This is how the torso would move during the pitch. In this rotation, it's natural. It doesn't just happen though. Okay, many athletes are locked up one way or another or both. Okay, and it's important that your training programs address this. Now, are we only looking to improve rotational motion availability? No. We want to make sure it's there, so we need to assess that it's there in your training program. Your athletes need to be able to rotate. Through the thoracic spine where we're designed to rotate, like I talked about, we took the legs and arms off the body for this example, but it's really important that when, especially on the drive leg and the stride leg, that when the foot's in contact with the ground, what allows us to rotate, to exhaust extension out of the back leg and rotate our pelvis toward third base slightly is internal rotation of the back leg, and on stride foot contact, which allows the pelvis to rotate over a stable front leg, is internal rotation and adduction of that lead hip. So rotation at the hips and the shoulders, obviously for a healthy shoulder and pitching mechanics, is important. So we need rotation in the spine, we need rotation in the hips, and we need rotation at the shoulders in your training program. But, as I kind of alluded to very early on in this video, I don't want you to just think, again, this is for fitness instructors and pitching instructors and parents and athletes, that this is all about being able to twist the lower body away from the upper body and twist the upper body away from the lower body. Okay? It's about resisting motion. In this sequence, as important as it is for the shoulders to dissociate and turn away from the hips, it's as important that the hips don't come along for the ride too early. Okay, because this allows us to exhaust what extension out of the legs to maximize velocity. Hips and pelvis can't turn too early. There has to be dissociation. At the same time, as the torso, or as the lower torso, the lower core, pelvis dissociates from the shoulders during stride foot contact through release, it's important that the upper body can, again, resist rotation. Or the rotational pull or momentum of the pelvis to achieve this, again, dissociation. Training, more often than not, your athletes will, especially female athletes, will have the mobility that they need. What they're lacking is control against movement. So for fitness and strength and conditioning professionals, core stability exercises that resist extension, exercises that resist rotation, are your answer, at least at the beginning of your training programs. So your training programs become more advanced as they progress. Okay, then you add in more dynamic movements, which challenge not only stability of the stability of the system, but specifically stability of the lower trunk on top of a mobile upper trunk or upper core, and then once again movement of a lower trunk under a static upper trunk. Okay, so we're gonna move in all directions. We're gonna move from the top down and from the bottom up as well. All right. I hope the principles are clear here, and I hope that I communicate it in a way that softball community can understand, and fitness instructors, strength and conditioning professionals can understand and look at your programs and always, appreciate what you're already doing first. Are you already addressing this? Are you just not communicating it in softball terms? Okay, and for fitness, the softball community, when you look at your daughter's training program, is this being addressed? Is it already being addressed? Have you not just appreciated it in softball terms? Okay, is it being omitted? All right. For rehab professionals, okay, I believe that if you're a rehab professional, even if you're a strength and conditioning professional, you want to look for the nucleus of dysfunction. You want to get to the center of dysfunction. Okay, we can do a lot on the periphery, and we can do a lot of stuff. If you have an injured shoulder, we can work on the rotator cuff, and we can do soft tissue work and stretching and stuff for hip pain or lower back pain or anything like that. right? But what is the cause of mechanical or physical breakdown? You want to get to the nucleus of the issue. Organization, mobility and stability, pelvis and rib cage throughout the softball pitching gait, right, really is where you want to look. So I hope this gives you an idea in softball terms and both kind of exercise science terms of what exactly is happening. Questions and comments, please post below. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.